The most common living arrangement for young men in this country used to be with their spouse, men my age, men in their 30s, used to be with their spouse, sometimes they'd have a kid. It's now with their parents. There is a real deep sickness for my generation.
Maybe there should be more intense shorter degrees, or more degrees where actually people do study part-time, but that be more of an option while they're also working.
Obviously, Jo Swinson, I'm going to come to you first. You were in that coalition government. How much responsibility do you take for the system we have now?
Well, it's obviously changed quite a lot since what we brought in when we were in coalition, and it's interesting to hear what Martin was saying about the repayment threshold, because I vividly remember I was PPS to Vince Cable at the time, the discussions that we had and the way the Liberal Democrats pushed for and secured that uprating of the threshold, which of course was then stopped.
Okay.
And so there's been changes to this system. I mean, I think it's fair to say that, you know, higher education funding is not solved. There's not necessarily any easy answers to it. And it's not really the case that any political party has covered themselves in glory on this issue.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to bring in Ollie Dugmore. I can see you sort of looking at the ceiling as you're listening to Jo Swinson. What's going through your head?
What the Lib Dems told my generation when they were seeking office for that 2010 election was pretty radically different to what ended up happening. The abolition of tuition fees was what they promised, and they won a lot of votes as a consequence of that. Instead, we end up in the system, you know, we're talking about Plan 2 loans. I have the benefit of the gift of being one of the first to pay that. I paid £9 for my university. I went to university in 2012. It took me a decade to get my earnings to a point in 2022 when I was actually able to start paying them down and my loan started to reduce. So interesting listening to Arthur, listening to Martin talk about this. Martin is absolutely right. You know, if I was to unilaterally say I've decided I want to stop paying now, I'd be pursued for the money that I owe. The government is at liberty to change what it likes. It has changed what it likes about it. It's regressive. So if you're wealthy enough to have had the liberty to pay off that 27 grand, if typical 3-year course, 9k a year, whatever, you don't get charged the interest. It's done. So the wealthiest aren't subject to this. It's quite a peculiar situation where you end up, it's like a middle-class poverty trap almost, right? And particularly as well, on the regressive point, let's say you're a young mum. You get pregnant, you want to take maternity leave, you stop paying. You're not earning, perhaps, if you're self-employed. You're still being charged interest.
Yeah.
It's still going up. Yeah. Sorry, we'll stop talking in a minute, Vic, but I care about this quite a lot. You know, the most common living arrangement for young men in this country used to be with their spouse, men my age, men in their 30s, used to be with their spouse, sometimes they'd have a kid. It's now with their parents. There is a real deep sickness for my generation, and something like 9% of your monthly income going towards something like this, that would make a ginormous difference. I just urge Rachel Reeves a little word of caution when she was saying, oh, should other people pay for you to go to university?
That's not what the conversation is, actually, is it?
My generation pays for a great deal of what happens in this country. I don't make much of the NHS. I use very few public services. I pay a lot of tax, and I'm very happy to. But if she wants to start making the argument, oh, should you be paying for things that you don't use, there'll be a lot of pensioners that don't get a pension.
Right. I mean, I don't know if Rachel Reeves is watching. You've just punched through the television. Jo Swinson, what would you say?
Well, look, I think there is a case for various elements of this being looked again, and as I've already said, I don't think that political parties have necessarily covered themselves in glory. But there aren't necessarily easy answers. So, I mean, I represented a Scottish constituency. I'm from Glasgow. And in Scotland, there's a different system, but you've also had a real challenge with the funding of universities. And, you know, it's not long since we had Dundee University close to collapse. There's been huge job layoffs in lots of Scottish universities. So I think there's also an appreciation north of the border that this situation is not sustainable and that there needs to be a look again at it. And dare I say, I think there's also perhaps a wider question about higher education in terms of how do we want the education to be in the 21st century for challenges we have? I mean, AI was mentioned earlier. It seems to me that critical thinking is more important than ever. But also, is the structure of how we're doing it now the best way to do it? It seems it's very traditional that we're stuck in the way that it was done, you know, 3-year degrees, 4 in Scotland, you know, as it's been done for such a long time. Maybe there should be more intense shorter degrees, or more degrees where actually people do study part-time, but that be more of an option while they're also working. And so it might get around some of these challenges. I think perhaps we need a more innovative way of thinking about this for our current needs.
I mean, Ollie Dugmore, you will have heard Martin Lewis talk about his threat of a judicial review 10 years ago, and it didn't come to pass. And as he's revealed tonight, thank God, because his legal advice was he wouldn't have won. But that pressure was enough to force the then government to backtrack. I mean, can you see pressure building? I mean, Nick talked about a committee doing an investigation. You mean like the Education Select Committee or the Public Accounts Committee or whatever? Is that going to be enough?
I think it's very difficult to revisit debts that have already been accrued. You know, if we're talking about the way the Americans, for example, talk about student loan forgiveness, I think that's probably pretty unlikely. I think measures that you could take, you could look at, for example, this latest generation of students that are going. It's not a 30-year repayment window; it's 40 years, right? So they'll be paying this in their 60s. I think it would be pretty fair to say, no, do you know what, guys? 30 years, you could do a lower interest rate, and crucially, people like Arthur, paediatric doctors, people that we want in our society. I'd be very open to select courses, whether it's tech engineers, doctors, nurses, free fees. Go qualify. We want you. We want you to work in our country. We're not going to charge you for studying.
Who's going to pay for that?
Central government.
Taxpayers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So no, absolutely. But let's have this conversation. But the time's running out.
Okay.
So people on very low incomes are paying,
Yep.
I'm just asking you, is this what you mean, are paying for some people to have free university education because we need those kinds of workers, yeah?
In the simplest and shortest terms, Vic, education is a public good, not a commodity.
Nick,
I was just going to say that Ollie's made a fundamental point at the heart of our society. You and I are the generation where we got our tuition fees paid regardless of parental income, and we had maintenance assessed, means tested on parental income. We are heading in the direction, we're not far away from qualifying for a £12,000 a year state pension. You are saddled with this debt. Is there going to be the equivalent of a £12,000 a year state pension when you reach 67 or 68? Big question mark.
A little bit later, and I'm subject to a reverse triple lock, Nick, because if I earn more, I'm charged more interest on my student loan.
Gosh, OK.